I'm Vicki Hogarth and welcome to Southwest Magazine. My guest today is MP John Williamson. Thank you for being here, John.
It's my pleasure. It's great to be with you and your audience today.
Well, a lot has changed since we last sat down together. Can you tell me a little bit about how the pandemic has been for you as an MP? Definitely wasn't the year we were expecting to have.
No, and you're right. I think this has changed an awful lot of how we work, how we interact, both as communities and even as a country. So I was in New Brunswick, home from Parliament in the run-up to the pandemic, and noticed even that week here in St. Andrews, before the lockdown happened, how few people were going to the restaurants in town. I was at the Kennedy one night, I think the Thursday before they locked it down on Friday, and my dad and I were the only customers they'd had. So already you could see the impact this was going to have on businesses, small businesses in particular. Then, of course, the province, as well as across the country, the economy was locked down. We were urged to stay home for public health reasons. And the good news is a lot of people, most people, the vast majority of people did just that. And I think that's why we've been successful, particularly successful here in New Brunswick. We had a provincial team that was ahead of it, that made some good decisions, and New Brunswickers followed the rules, and we've done well. At the same time, Parliament was still trying to figure out how it was going to operate. But because of the 2-week self-isolation, a lot of us weren't able to go to Ottawa, come home because of the challenges. So I spent about 7 weeks in Ottawa from March onward, when Parliament was sitting once every week, once every 10 days, trying to get through the emergency measures. And so right away there were lots of changes. We had a Parliament that was sitting not as regularly. I wasn't traveling as much, but that meant I had a lot more time now to be interacting directly with constituents, either on email or over the phone. It was kind of a nice change, because often in this job, members of Parliament across the country, so much of our time can be eaten up just traveling to and from Ottawa, or at home around the riding. So it was a different setup, but a good setup. And of course, our office in St. Stephen has been running flat out. Particularly after Service Canada closed its doors. We had a lot of people coming in, or I should say calling us, because our doors were closed. We were working from the inside. The team was working from the inside. But we were able to help people access some of the relief benefits that have been put out there to help Canadians get through the first the health crisis, and now I worry an economic slowdown.
What is the role of the opposition in a crisis like this?
Yeah, I think we've noticed a change in the tone in Parliament. It has been to, yes, be critical, but critical in a way that is meant to improve the programs that are on offer. And so, we're still an adversarial system, and we still try to press changes, and we do that publicly in Parliament, which I think is the best forum, because that's where we hear the ideas and we come to a consensus. And that was largely happening. But we were also trying to work behind the scenes with the government. We would see, because we were on the front lines, when people would call our office, they couldn't access the benefit, they would explain why. We would hear this over and over in some cases. We could go to the government, the minister, say, this is not working. And I'm sure this was happening from Liberal offices as well as Conservative and NDP and Green members. We were all hearing the same thing, so we were working with the government to improve the programs. And that was, I think, happening. There's a lot of goodwill around that. There has been some fracturing of that in the last couple of weeks. We think Parliament should be sitting regularly. The Prime Minister has taken another view. Look, our system is one where we have a minority Parliament, we have a minority government. We do need to hear from all the different viewpoints here. No political party has a monopoly on good ideas. And Parliament is the authority to spend money. So if the government is going to make changes or create programs, they're going to have to go through Parliament. And that's why there's a bit of a dust up this week over some aid benefits for folks with disabilities. The Prime Minister wants us to be able to pass it in a day, and all the opposition members are saying, no, we should look at this like we look at normal legislation. We'll bring in some witnesses, we'll hear how the system is working and where we can improve it. So we'll see how this works out. Because parliaments and legislatures around the world are still meeting, and I think in particular, and I've written in Maclean's and other publications why it's important for Parliament to sit, because accountability and oversight is important day in and day out. for countries that govern themselves like ours in a democracy. But it's particularly important when we're spending so much so quickly to have that oversight. So we're still pushing on that. But by and large, to answer your question, I think all the parties have worked well to come up with programs that we think are going to benefit Canadians in a way that's going to give them the relief they need. Look, and I know there's still a lot of pain out there. I'm not saying this is going to replace the economy, but it's meant to be relief aid that gets us through the tough times. So as things begin to open up, people can go back to work, businesses can open up again.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is it $600 billion that's been spent on relief packages?
Oh, I don't think it's quite that high, but it is. I think it's going to be as high as $250 billion. Okay. This again is why we're pressing the government to deliver, if not a budget, an economic update, so we can see what's happening. And we think Parliament should be sitting to have these answers, because of course we have the wage subsidy program that is benefiting or helping employers keep people on the payroll. We have what's called the CERB, the emergency relief benefit that's benefiting workers and small entrepreneurs. Again, helping them to kind of have some funds, have some money to pay the bills. It's not a replacement for work, obviously, because this economy is so big and so complex. There are other programs out there as well. So we'd like to see an economic update from the government as well, just to get a sense of the magnitude and how much we've spent and what it's going to mean long term as well.
The CERB has obviously had some criticism in the sense that some people are thinking it doesn't encourage people to go to work right now or take jobs that need to be filled. What's your perspective on that?
Look, I see that, but I also think it's slightly overstated because the benefit program lasts about 16 weeks. So people that went on it mid-March when it began, that benefit is going to run out the first week of July. So at that point, the incentive is going to be very much time to get back to work. Look, let's go back to March, where we were when this pandemic hit. Businesses shut down. People did not have money to pay their rent. I had written a piece in the National Post talking about the need to have the program was good. The flaw was it didn't encourage people to be out there working and earning a little income. So I thought they should have had a component where if you earn money, they might claw back the CERB a little bit. Not that, so you wouldn't lose it. It wouldn't be all or nothing. And it turns out that is what the government's now trying to pass in its legislation. EI is something called working on claim. It allows people that are on EI to work. You're never worse off. You're always better off by working. But if you don't have work, there's still support there. And that's the problem with the CERB. If you take a job, you can lose the benefit. So folks are reluctant to do that, not knowing what the future is going to hold. So we need a hybrid system, a system that has the support there if there is no work, but if there is work there, you're better off taking the work.
In your eyes, what does the road to economic recovery look like? Obviously, we still don't have a vaccine. Is Canada better off than other countries? Are we doing well? Is it scary?
I'm concerned. I think the rollout of the relief plans is going to be the easy job we've seen the last couple months. The challenge is going to be the recovery. Even though we're starting to open up and we do see some good news, there's still a lot of people that are hurting out there, a lot of people without work. And because we can't open up restaurants and service industry or tourism, which is important in this area, I think it's going to be a slow start. So Canada is in some ways better positioned. Our fiscal house was in a strong position, which meant we've been able to provide relief. But we have some challenges as well. Some of our key industries have struggled, particularly natural resources, for example. I think we're going to need to do more to get more people in these industries working. Getting people back to work is going to be critical here, and so I think that's going to be the challenge over the next year, at least, is managing the fallout from the pandemic and getting people back to work, and doing so in a way that does not make things work. Like, for some reason in Ottawa, we're hearing talk about raising the HST. I think that's the exact tax you don't want to raise, because right now it's consumer spending that is hurting. People are home, they're not spending the way they used to. if we do spend money, we're going to the food store, we're buying necessities, there's not a lot of extra consumption going on out there. So we have to make sure that we don't raise taxes in a way that's going to hurt the economy. We have to make sure we have programs that incentivize work and make it worthwhile to work, but at the same time have relief programs that if someone truly is out of luck and out of work, they're not destitute as well. But I think that's the challenge, and that's an opportunity for opposition parties. It's going to be a challenge for the government. The Prime Minister has had his daily conferences. He's done well at those. We think those should be in Parliament. We're going to keep pushing that. But the real challenge is going to begin through the summer and afterwards, and that's where I think the government's going to be in trouble if they don't have some good ideas to put out there. And we'll put forward ideas as well. I've given you one, the HSTs, not the tax to increase, but we'll see where they're going to go in the fall.
A place in your riding, New Brunswick Southwest, that has been hit particularly hard by the pandemic is Campobello Island, because they don't have the year-round ferry. And I know that's something you brought to Parliament in November 2019 before this happened. What has this crisis done to highlight the need, and how are you working to make that happen?
So first, I just want to pause and just kind of give you a great example of how we work together with the provincial government, the federal government, and myself to ensure that before the border was shut down, we had an agreement with the White House to allow residents of Campobello to cross through the United States for essential services, even do some shopping in Lubec, Maine, if for essential services, and not have to self-quarantine, not be denied entry as Canadians. This was important because the island is remote. It's a place that there is no ferry service. So I was really pleased to see the work that was done. I was joking that they hadn't talked about Campobello so much in the White House since FDR was president, and it's true. I mean, now when I speak to the foreign minister or the deputy prime minister, they know exactly what I'm talking about, because first the first issue was the mail issue around Campobello, and the foreign minister right away was very helpful in addressing that, recognizing there's a problem. It still is not entirely solved, but the point is Campobello is on the radar screen in Ottawa, and for the first time at the end of last year, the federal government opened the door to providing some support for a ferry service. This was new. This was a new tone, a new opportunity, and since then, of course, Premier Higgs has also indicated his support with federal assistance. So I think there's been a change in focus here, in part because of the pandemic, which has really, we're all focused on it, but the problem was there long before as well. I mean, I don't know if it's an urban legend. I had heard that even after 9/11, the Campobello U.S. border was the only land crossing that remained open because of the uniqueness, and that was helpful, and we appreciated the Americans both then and today allowing our residents to cut through Washington County, but the ferry service would ensure that access is there permanently. And we've even had some challenges around that. There was a family from the Fredericton area that went to the island thinking they could because they were family members. When they went back, they had to self-isolate. There was one child in the car that was actually a resident of Campobello. We were able to solve that, but it just showed us all some of the challenges. So I think there's a lot of goodwill to make that happen. The federal government has indicated its willingness to support. What I've asked the Transportation Minister, Bill Oliver, for, which is critical, is now a plan.
Right.
Ottawa doesn't fund ideas, they fund proposals. So we need to see now a plan that talks about what's needed at each end, where those ends going to be. One will be Campobello, will the other one be on Deer Island, will it be in Letite? What's needed for infrastructure? What kind of ferry is going to be required? How often will it run? These are now up to the provincial officials to pull together. They're capable. They run other ferry services, so I'm confident that plan will come. And once we have that plan in hand, I'll be able to go to Ottawa and push it along with the provincial government and others that support this. So it's moving in the right direction. I am pleased that the Stan Lord's ferry service is going to start up mid-June, which is great news, because that's going to solve some of the family challenges Campobello has. People are going to be able to visit, get off the island without going through Washington County. But again, I was pleased at how all three levels came together to keep Campobello connected to New Brunswick, yes, to the state of Maine, but with minimal hassles. And I know there's been some hiccups and some bumps, but believe me, it was not for lack of trying. It's just, we're dealing with this unique situations where borders are closed across the country, except this border with for Campobello remains open for residents. So it's been a good news story.
One of the fears on the island is that once the seasonal ferry is operating, which is this week, it's fine until September, when it would stop again. How soon could a plan that Minister Oliver puts forward be put into action, and what kind of plan would you think would receive federal funding?
Yeah, so I'm hoping they can put something together for this year. At that point, then it's the construction that's going to take. It's both the approval and the construction. So is it going to be in place for the fall? I don't think so. But I've already written the federal government, as well as the Premier, putting the importance of the ferry on the radar. The Prime Minister a few months ago indicated there would be special funds made available for the provinces for COVID-19 related expenditures. I think extending the ferry into the fall would fall under that program if the province is willing or thinks they should. If the province wants to make that ask, I think the feds might be willing to pay for a extended season for the ferry. That will require some negotiations, but as I said, I've already written to Minister Freeland about that to get it on the radar screen, because you're right. When the ferry winds down, it will leave Campobello without that direct access. Now, again, they will continue to have the access through Washington County, which is important. So, these things do take a little time. And even once it's approved, then of course you've got construction, and that happens as well. So, but in this it's been 6 months, 7 months since the election, and it has been a sea change in attitude on the ferry. And even the municipality supports it. When I was in my first term, the municipality on Campobello didn't really back a ferry, and that's changed now. I think that's why we're seeing the change in outlooks. Locals have made it a priority, so it's getting the attention it deserves.
Brunswick Southwest is obviously a big riding geographically. What are some of the questions, concerns that you're fielding from people as you get your emails and phone calls? So
there are a lot, and a lot of them the vast majority have to do with people that are out of work looking for some sort of relief, some sort of assistance, and we're able to point them to the various, mostly federal, some provincial programs. So there are answers there. They don't always fit for every individual, so we do have a lot of cases that we're trying to find solutions. But I think the big important question, not related to the economy, is the internet service. That is something that I'm hearing from communities inland, as well as island communities and on the coast, where they do not have reliable, high-speed internet. This has always been a problem, because in today's world, internet is so important for daily life, communications, entertainment, you name it, it's online. Now, though, it's taken particular importance because of the work that people are doing from home now. We are told that classes might be online in September. And so if folks don't have adequate internet, they can't do these basic things. They can't fulfill their obligations that their employers are asking of them. Students might not be able to get the education that others in their class are, just because they live in a different area. This is a big problem, and it's one that the federal government's going to have to address, I think, and prioritize. And around here, there are some good solutions. There's a company on Grand Manan Island run by Howard Small, who has done some good work on Grand Manan, offers a great service. He's oversubscribed on the island, and he's looking to expand. He has an application in with the CRTC for some federal funding, because the federal government does provide seed money to the big internet companies. And that's been one of the challenges of my criticism in Ottawa. Too much focus is paid to the big telecoms and not enough to the smaller niche players that can address the problems we have locally and solve them. So this is an issue wherever you are. I think in rural Canada, it doesn't just impact New Brunswick Southwest, but it's something I'm hearing more and more of, because people are, we need to get people back to work when it's safe to do so. Working from home is safe, but if people don't have that internet, they can't work, which means their livelihood is in trouble, and they have a tough decision to make about a paycheck versus health. So that is why this is quickly, I think, moving up the agenda as being an important issue, and the federal government's going to have to put more money into it. I mean, the internet, it's infrastructure of the 21st century. You know, we spend money on roads and bridges and wharves, and those are all important to get products to and from market, to get workers around cities in a manner that is efficient. Internet's part of that in today's world, and we're going to have to really up our game on that to make sure the service is there for Canadians.
Yeah, we're looking ahead to a school year where even high school kids will be doing some of their coursework still online. What's your role in a case working with someone like Howard Small to talk to the CRTC about getting him adequate funding? What role do you play?
It's to be a squeaky wheel. We've already reached out the office, and we're following up his application with a letter. But the CRTC is a difficult beast. It is arm's length from government. It's not a matter of just going to talk to the minister to get this done. We're hoping we can appeal to them to fund this. Where lawmakers, MPs, and the government comes in is the parameters they set. And one of the flaws, I think, of the federal government's approach right now is they don't highlight or put the small niche players on an equal footing. They're at a disadvantage because they're a little smaller. So, you know, the Operation Grand Man would be a great template to expand along the coast of Charlotte County and elsewhere. And the CRTC, it's their decision, so I'm just going to try to be a squeaky wheel here at that level while working with the federal government to change its priorities, so we look at the local providers and give them more access to funds.
And do you think that those local providers, do you think that plays a positive role in balancing the big telecom in Canada, where we've had issues in the past of having these oligarchies?
Well, I do. Yeah, I sure do. Look, I think competition's a good thing. You know, at times I do think that CRTC funding has gone to companies that were going to do this anyway. So we've been funding projects that they were going to move ahead on in suburban areas. We need to make sure this funding is directed to the areas where the companies might not go to, and so we have it there to build. And I think when a smaller company comes in, that does the job and can do it for a better price, the federal government should be all over that to both save some money and to make sure it gets done and to service our underserved internet areas.
You actually have despite everything that's going on in the world, there's some great news in your family. You're having a baby, and it's
I'm not having a baby. Yes,
your family.
My wife Kelly is we're due. She's due. We're due July the 10th, so coming up very, very soon. Kelly's doing great. She's still doing some work for the Royal Canadian Navy, where she's a commander in the Navy. She'll be in the Navy 24 years next month. So it's I think she would say time flies. She's doing great. She looks great. And it's an exciting time. So it's one more ball to juggle. But you know, I've got a great team here in St. Stephen. After I came back from Ottawa and went through self-isolation, I went to the office, and I knew I had a good team because when I went in there, I wasn't overwhelmed with all these questions. The engine was running, things were getting done. There were a few things I had to handle, and the same thing at home. Kelly's got it under control. She's doing well. She's still working. I've got a honey-do list, which is quite long to get done in the next month. But we're excited. It's going to be it's a girl. Right now we're calling her Baby W, but it's an exciting time, and so we're looking forward to it. And we're up in St. John every week for doctor's appointment, and so far so good. And I'll keep you informed.
A lot of people who have kids say it really changes their perspective on what they care about, even politically. You start thinking a generation from now.
Yeah.
How has that affected your hopes for Canada, for Southwest New Brunswick, and things you're looking for the future?
I'd say bring me back in a couple months. It's been very overwhelming. Like, for example, so with the pandemic, we're taking extra precautions to make sure Kelly is healthy. so you begin to think kind of about more than just one person, obviously. And I think we've been pretty smart about that, like I think anyone would in our situation. But yeah, you begin to kind of think about college funds and all these challenges that we're going to face. But right now, we're still very much in the okay. In a few weeks, we're going to go to the hospital and come back, and there's going to be a third person. And how are we going to manage that? And so, I think we're up to it. My wife is a great multitasker, and she's got a lot of energy. She's a wonderful person, and I couldn't be happier to be doing this with anyone else but her. And I'm excited about this.
And speaking of going back to Parliament, I should mention to the people at home that we've been planning this interview for your 2 weeks since you've been home quarantining. How was that experience for you?
It wasn't too bad. Look, I think it wasn't too bad. I think you have to approach the self-quarantine a bit like a timeout. I won't say vacation because it's not that fun, but you have to approach it with a stack of books. You can't be thinking about all the things you want to do outside the house. You need someone reliable to bring some food in, but it wasn't too bad. And because of the success New Brunswick has had over the pandemic, I think it's, I encourage others, if they're coming into the province, to follow the rules. The province is going to allow other Canadians with properties in the province to come to New Brunswick in the coming days and weeks, and I hope the message to them is loud and clear. And believe me, when you look at some of the struggles that we've seen Canadians have faced in the last 150 years, self-isolation is a pretty small one in the grand scheme of things. And yes, we're all going a little stir crazy the last couple months, but think about what Anne Frank went through, for example, or people who lived inside for years during the Second World War. The sacrifices other Canadians have made, the sacrifices we've had to make so far have been minor by comparison. Now again, I do worry about folks that are out of work, and we have to make sure government has some answers to get the economy going again. That's a real challenge. So it's there's a lot. The great thing about Southwest is that there are so many small communities, and they're all different.
Yeah.
And they all want to know that their member of parliament is there for them, but also interacting with them, which is why I do spend so much time on the road. But it's one of the prettiest ridings in the country, so it's not a burden, except sometimes it's the time getting from to drive from one end of this ride to the other can take 2.5 hours one way. So.
Well, I look forward to seeing more of you as well. Thank
sure.
you for being here today, John. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Vicki.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO-TV, New Brunswick's only source for independent community television.